Ritual madness, religious ecstasy, to forego the sorrow of human sadness, foreseen by divine intervene something otherworldly. Visually, psychedelic, spiritually, ever more ecstatic. The thrill, chills felt within, all by one's will, in mind, body, and soul akin. Manifestation, forgo reality and realization, fantasy and fascination, manic by magical sensation, madness, Dionysus revealing, bliss, the spiritual realm, the physical concealing. Mythology, so too they believed, symbolism and symbology, a symbol embodied of all conceived, a rebirth of sense, indulging in worldly pleasures, the visuals intense, to see visually divine imagery of no measure. Theomania, divine madness, often by altars, doorways to stray by way of euphoria, to enter an altered state of being, often sensuous, accompanying manic bliss. 4 types thereof, as described by Socrates, practiced by the many occult mysteries whereof, akin within many mysteries. The prophetic frenzy, the gift of Apollo, of the oracle of Delphi, and the priestesses of Dodona, but this be the first, 3 are still to follow. Mystical revelations, the gift of Dionysus, let's not forget the accompanying initiations, a way of release for those in need, with festivity being a religious focus. The third, poetic inspiration, the gift of the muses, my personal favorite for your information, whereby absurd word in a blurred state fascination produces. The madness of lovers, lastly, the gift of Eros and Aphrodite, as love begins with a type of insanity, a break from the ordinary, and the lover sees true reality, supposedly. The prophetic frenzy, the gift of Apollo, in search of enlightenment and religious ecstasy, to foresee visions visually, ritually, by seers who follow, often involving music, dance, and wine, like that of the rituals honoring Dionysus, to channel a message otherworldly divine, as possessed by a deity or believed to be, hence the name divine madness. The oracle of Delphi, namely, known as the Pythia otherwise, most notably and famously, would enter a state of possession and prophesize. Earthly vapors inhaled, laurel leaves chewed too, sat upon a tripod above fishes as entailed. These hallucinogenic vapors would induce a euphoric feeling, allowing a spiritual breakthrough. A disembodied state of being, hence spiritual this ritual, which by physical separation allows foreseeing, prophesying spiritual revelation as believed of said oracle. Open to interpretation, as the prophecies were often cryptic, individual evaluation, as characterized by the term Delphic. Mystical revelations and initiations, the gift of Dionysus, symbolic ritualistic purification, dances, sacrifices, substances to induce divine madness. The many mysteries throughout history, meaning the Eleusinian and Dionysian cults, as well others, the initiates in sworn secrecy, hence in its fabric, hidden to the public, and many manic occults. Initiation rites, processions. For the Dionysian mysteries, a rite called Maisis, a preparatory cleansing in succession, to be rid of ritual impurity and vengeance spirits, varying in practice. Once cleansed of the Erinyes and miasma, follows the main initiation, the Telet or Orgia, and here begins maddening divination and mystical revelation. Music and dancing, combined when consumed by the consumption of the divine wine and bliss, manic and ecstatic prancing, introduced for induced altered states of consciousness, a profound spiritual and psychological awakening, in combination with symbolic acts and reenactments, how liberating the confounds of the norm breaking, to perform abnormally for the sake of enlightenment, attainment, and atonement, with the promise of a better life, a closer connection to the divine, to undergo transformation and see beyond societal strife, merely by a frenzy and the partaking of dance and wine. Before I continue with poetic inspiration, Me now, of course, the gift of the Muses, as I'm long now inspired. I feel me need share some information, and write of the Eleusinian Mysteries and all that transpired. Dedicated to Demeter and her daughter, Persephone, who was abducted by Hades. Rituals similar but in many ways differ to that of the Dionysian Mysteries. Initiation began with purification, including bathing and animal sacrifices to cleanse the mind and body. And so begins the transformation, follows a procession to Eleusis, a ritual and sacrificial journey. The main ceremonies took place in Telesterion, a large hall in Eleusis on 6th and 7th of 9 total days thereof, which include the consumption of a psychoactive drink called Kykeon, inducing visions and divine revelations whereof. The reason for the 9-day initiation, simply to mirror the journey of Demeter, specifically coinciding with the duration it took her to find and reunite with her daughter. Lest I forget mention, unlike the Dionysian Mysteries, festivity, religious ecstasy, and divine connection, sworn secrecy, and reenactments of the devoted mythologies, with the themes of death and rebirth centered, and a promise of a better afterlife believed, a euphoric psychedelic state entered to foresee as transformative, receptive, a new way to live, perceived. The gift of the Muses, Poetic Inspiration, by possession induces, praiseworthy maddening divination. Socrates believed, poets are not the true authors of their work instead, channels for the Muses' songs he perceived, they gathered from honeyed fountains, metaphorically said. A divine power, the source of poetic creativity, the poets, conduits, not independent creators, their work not rational thought, rather divinely inspired state of ecstasy. Basing off this, poets seen as light-winged holy things, believed eclipsed by those of inspired madness, were those who relied solely on skill as a means for inspiring their writing. An inability without divine inspiration, these light-winged holy things as labeled, the most profound intellectual and creative works are not of rational creation. To speak, absent of the inspiration of the Muses, believed unable. Rather gifted not so a craft then, unable be mastered through technique alone, powerless then unlike that of inspired madmen, as coined the term for by divine madness, a possession, inspiration is shown. And those whom the gift received were not only of skill, but of personal charisma as perceived, as charismatic performers whom divine truth could channel. Inspired madmen believed to be possessed by the 9 Muses, goddesses of whom they received divine inspiration, their flow of creativity ever so oozes. Honeyed fountains, the sweet enchanting nature of poetry, to feel as though one can move mountains, limitless in madness, miracles in possession of a divine entity. A frenzy, a trance so to speak, worldly understanding ever so lacking anything spiritual, rational thought simply peaks, the divine eternal to transcend the virtual by means of wonders mystical. You've seen it all before, still to this day, musicians, writers, and more. Substance abuse keeps reality at bay. Perceptions alter. One then performs abnormally. Sober minds begin stir, as they see simply ordinarily and formally. A strange, deranged stranger, simply exposing my habits. When reality falls a blur, it's then fantasy exhibits. How do I write? How did they? Foreign of worldly insight, crossfade as the kids nowadays say. A delving into soul, a tourist as well a tourist of consciousness. Mind being in spirit and whole. You mess with the bull, you get the horns. Me against me, a lunge into madness. For the sake of art, a right to write, ecstatic ritual impart, in way my burning passion may ignite. Jim Morrison himself wrote, "Why do I drink? So that I can write poetry." Here I note the quote, so that you're aware and may compare with other poets throughout history. Edgar Allan Poe. Dare I say more, even further back we may go, but I prefer look on what's in store. The madness of lovers, the gift of Aphrodite and Eros, a path to philosophy in which the soul's memory uncovers, a perfect form of beauty which in birth of a physical body the soul no longer knows. Believed to be a divine madness by Socrates, a gift from the gods capable of inspiring prophecy, as well other divine things and epiphanies, a greater understanding of divinity and philosophy. Through the beauty of their beloved, one sees, supposedly their soul's origins in memory. With this comes said ideal form of beauty, and begins eternal conflict for a yearn to transcend one's physical body. To return to its divine origin, personified by a charioteer, this being reason within, and two horses, one noble, the other unruly and lustful, to be clear. Madness the result thereof, the conflict within, for the unpredictable nature whereof, love itself is akin. For whether love divine or carnal, differentiating between, you see, whether of depravity or something truthful, alas, the risk for virtue comes with external dependency. The overall goal, with divine love, to seek wisdom and virtue, through a shared love, a delving into one's soul, by channeling the lover's madness to transcend the physical and come to that which is true. Sex magic, the creation or rather manifestation of desires, hence labeled ritualistic, through clear intention the birth of what one hopes to acquire, a supposed means to an end, the surging power of sexual energy, embody of will to spiritually transcend, as sex itself is spiritual synergy, to treasure the pleasure of intimacy, simultaneously see what one desires, indulge visually in the scenery of said imagery, pleasure within pleasure only feels one's desires fire. Likened to any ceremony, to burn sage or light incense, let candles and music may accompany, then the manifestation ritual may commence. This, of course, goes with normal intercourse as well, to take place within a sacred place naturally. The bedroom works well as far as I can tell. So long atmospheric, ecstatic, the magic is really in what the bodies embody. In orgasm, the soul opens to a divine realm, supposedly, and that sexual energy being a potent force, one can harness to transcend their perceived reality. Of course, we already know souls intertwine in intercourse. If souls give a piece of one another, even in one-night stands, then possibly one's perception may alter, as while renewing perception of what we believe we understand. Still, this poem is of ritual sex and manifestation, not the delving into the spirituality behind sex generally, to visualize and realize that of one's fascination, but let's not overlook the dangers of careless sex entirely. You bear a piece of every soul you had sex with after all, so I'm aware you know this, of course, and those souls you share with the souls come to follow, and they theirs intertwine with you, hence the inter in intercourse. How spiritual, sex itself a ritual, so naturally manifestation therein makes sense. To transcend the seemingly virtual, I doubt unless by making love, true love, will sex magic provide a sense of spiritual cleanse. Tantric sex a meditative practice, unlike that of sex magic, with an emphasis of breathing and mindfulness, the primary focus and experience non-orgasmic. Rather a journey of sensation, where a spiritual connection is achieved, for the partners involved, hence it being a form of meditation, unlike sex magic, where the manifestation of desires is conceived. Goals differ, so too origins, not only of self but also one's partner, heightened spirituality and sensuality akin. Sex magic being of Western esotericism, with tantric principles serving as a foundation. Tantric sex, an Indian practice rooted in Hinduism and Buddhism, bringing healing, spiritual growth, and transformation. With slow and mindful movements, intense eye contact, and synchronized breathing, the partners as well as spiritual energy and attunement, to bring about a greater connection of mind, soul, and physical being. Crazy wisdom, unconventional, absurd, and erratic behavior, to strip away the pride that comes with being spiritual. A spiritual individual believing foreseeing does not make one a populist savior. Challenging notions of holiness, Tibetan Buddhism roots, to outsiders, a seeming madness, how divine the individual to sever societal fruits. The constraints of the norm, the teacher believed had achieved a level of wisdom more profound. Seemingly a frenzy, the teacher would perform, really at tools ultimately an awakening was found. The purpose of this, to break down the ego and expose spiritual hypocrisy, described as an innocent state of awareness, shattering the image of the conformably holy, wild, and free. Seemingly contradictory, but without ulterior motive, breaking spiritual rules supposedly, but no way intentionally offensive. An authentic expression of mind, free from dualistic thinking, and of pride and hypocrisy of any kind, the norms and complacency ever daring challenging. Rooted in the idea that reality can't be fully grasped by minds that are rational, and intuitive minds are a necessity, as the ultimate reality is paradoxical. A blinding trance dance, unfolding the very being of reality, sometimes blindfolded in order to enhance mystical beings met with a glance otherworldly. A mediator and divine communicator, the shaman on behalf of the community. A ritual mystical healer, the shaman's role to restore harmony. Spirit allies provide guidance. Within altered states it's so believed. A transformation and direct experience. Hidden dimensions and spiritual realms are perceived. Surrounding effigies and wearing animal costumes. Brewing ayahuasca and taking peyote. The shaman often consumes in a spiritual or healing ceremony. Chants and dances are integral. The ghost dance, for example, to achieve spiritual renewal, as well as expression, cultural, and vital. To an outsider seemingly a frenzy, the trance, with purpose, induced through a ritual. See, essentially it's rarely controlled ecstasy, and the shaman can end it at will. The Sangoma, the Bantu shaman, a spiritual and traditional healer, to my knowledge, in particular, South African. Though I imagine also derives from other Southern African cultures, bear in mind, foreign reader or listener, South Africa and Southern Africa aren't the same. Simply other Southern African countries I refer. Geography and American education is simply to blame. The purpose of the rituals of the Sangoma are akin to that of a shaman, mean I. The use of divination, spiritual rituals, and the herbal medicine wherein. The rituals and cultures is where the differences lie. Called by ancestors, either through dreams or an illness. The trainee, or twaza, trains under an established Sangoma for years. The process may include rituals and animal sacrifices. On a separate note, Sangomas throwing bones as a form of divination, the way they land is said to be controlled by the ancestors. To deliver a message, a means of communication. These bones, items where the representations differ. Bones, coins, dice, seeds, stones, and shells, representing different aspects of life, you see. Yes, actual bones are used as well. Animal bones, and the animals vary. The process preceded by a calling of ancestors by name, done so ritually, sometimes using snuff only to further invite communication with said ancestry. The healing and cleansing rituals, the method behind comparable to that of shamanism to some degree. Singing and dancing, ecstatic and spiritual, as well the use of symbolic medicines, naturally. Yes, psychoactive plants are used to induce altered states of consciousness, naturally these plants infused. Ubulawu, the name used for spiritual purposes. A modern festive mass hysteria, though afraid I've yet to see, within the Nevada desert area. Black Rock Desert and its temporary Black Rock City. Almost mythical, annually appears and disappears. I perceive to be spiritual, the festival I mean, as I hear there's a temple of tears. Some believe this festival to be a cult. Simply, I disagree. Burning the man, after all, merely a way of revolt. I think to each individual, ideally its entity, in its entirety, is to find yourself free. Ritual festivity, sure for some may be, others merely a way to express and indulge in creativity, as well to party, naturally, that will accompany. Celebrating individuality, freedom of expression and art, and yet a city as a community, as one sharing true to heart. This I admire. As well the burning of the effigy, the symbol of the man is simply dire, so with the fire to ashes completely the ideology. The burning, symbolizing release and rebirth, a sort of modern renaissance. I've been searching through the darkest depths of the earth, metaphorically of course, for the chance, to find something of worth to deem, liberating and reawakening, to realize and materialize the dream of true freedom in the making. This I'm curious of now. Mark my words, someday I will go. We'll get to the States somehow. By what means, I don't care to know. Simply that it will be a thrill, crowds drawn, dance and reborn, to freely flow, as free as my will, to see the fabric of reality torn. In conclusion, with this chapbook I write, to see beyond the illusion and disillusion, while the insight dims the heavenly light. Rational minds are limited. How's this for irony? Under the influence the divine is exhibited. One lives in spirit, but dies in body. An altering of perception, understanding renewed, otherworldly reception, how blind to indulge what once was prominently viewed. Societies throughout history, philosophies by Socrates, see individually to think by her or his story, ideologies stem from foreign entities. To see and grow, to be or follow, naivety or in the know, to halt completely or go. Substances alter, festivities amplify, how cultivating a blur the ancient cults did dignify. I do too the partaking, as did other poets, philosophers, and artists before, the seeming reality forsaking, under the influence we see furthermore. Irrational, still this, the strangest life I've ever known. Another Morrison quotes as I've the will, to lose myself in order to find and see what isn't shown. I've referred to many times before, to break or break on through, alas I'll find out as I now, through the realm of nightmares, venture once more.